Hello, my name is James Kelly, and I've got the great pleasure of interviewing the Reverend Tony Ponticello tonight. Hello, Tony. Good evening. Thank you for joining.
Hello, James. Happy to be here. It's not evening here, but happy to be here.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm in Scotland, and Tony's in San Francisco. And Tony is the executive minister of the CMC, the Community Miracles Center, that I think it's been going over 30 years. Is that right, Tony?
30. Yes. We were formed in 1987.
Yes.
I was one of the founders, so we're 31 and a half years of continually functioning. And
wow.
I've been in the leadership position of the organization for the whole time. So it's definitely my full-time gig and my life's work, I guess.
Wow.
So I've been very close to it. I mean, when we started, we were local. There was no internet when we started. It was a long time ago. We didn't. I remember it was 1996 when we got our first website. So we had already been in existence 9 years before the internet really started to take off. And we got on that fairly quickly, not immediately, but as soon as it became clear that that was going to become a thing, we jumped on.
And were you ordaining ministers before that, from the start, from the 80s, or was that a little bit later? Because your organization,
the Community Miracles Center actually grew out of another organization that was called the California Miracles Foundation.
Okay.
And both of those are both the predecessor organization and our organization. We're both legally recognized churches in the state of California and in the United States federal government. And both of them ordained ministers, had an ordination program. So technically, to answer your question, yes, I was doing it before. Before. But I just want to share, Reverend Tony Ponticello does not ordain anybody. Because individuals don't. The church ordains people.
Yeah, of course.
So I am not the church. I am the executive minister of the church. I'm the president of the board of directors of the church.
Yes.
But currently there are 7 of us on the board, and they're all very active. We have meetings every 2 months. Every aspect of the Community Miracles Center's functioning is gone over at every board meeting. They're all very free-thinking individuals, and they all have their opinions, and they all have their input, and they all have their gifts that they bring to the organization. So I'm very proud of them and happy to have them as mighty companions. So the CMC is not Reverend Tony Ponticello, even though he's probably the most visible face of it.
That's true. You're visible, especially at those conferences, at annual conferences that I've met you at least one of those, and you usually do.
Yeah, I MC the conferences. I'm the master of ceremonies. Our staff is made up of our ministers and other members, and a lot of them are members of the board of directors, and they all have spots in the conference. They all get to address everybody.
Yes.
They're all very visible and vocal and opinionated, and they don't always agree with me.
I love that. I mean, what you're describing there just describes some of your aliveness and kind of variety, and not being scared of controversial things or just addressing issues. I think that's, for me, it's one of the attractive things about you, is that you're so engaging in such a way like that. So
thank you.
Thank you for being that presence. And so our topic tonight at the start is looking at this idea of awakening to love. I mean, that term, awakening to love, is that something that you use, or is that valuable to you, that whole idea of awakening to love?
Well, I think how I would probably connect with that is just the course's teaching that we're asleep. And what's going on here that appears to be the physical world is a dream that we are having. And we are in the process of awakening ourselves within the dream. I believe, that we continue on this process of awakening ourselves within the dream, like being awake in the dream.
Yes.
To a point where we get so that we are so awake in the dream that the dream becomes such a close reflection to heaven that they cease to exist as separate states. So, I mean, you'd have to like really get into a definition
Sure.
of what it means to awake. You know, it's not like awake in the ultimate sense, which would mean awake in reality. But I think we can use the word to be awake in the dream. And then, of course, when we're awake in the dream, what we experience is the love that is the truth about ourselves, about our sisters and brothers, and actually about the world as a whole.
Yes.
That the world itself it can be seen as a manifestation of love. I think a lot of A Course in Miracles students get a little maybe too hooked into the idea of the world being a manifestation of fear, and that it sets up this energy where the world is always something to be transcended or risen above or forgotten or ignored or something.
Yeah.
But I think, I think that's an aspect of the correction. I think maybe an advanced aspect of the correction or subsequent aspect of the correction is to realize that the world is really just what we make of it. And so we can actually make it into, and we should be making it into, a manifestation of love and joy and abundance and charity. In fact, today's lesson said that. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Today's workbook lesson has an amazing passage in it. Yeah. It says, the world becomes a place of joy, charity, abundance, and endless giving. It is now so like to heaven that it is quickly transformed into the light that it reflects.
Wow.
So it's our job to turn this world into that close reflection of heaven and to really awaken to love, as you say, awaken to the love that is within us. But when we do that, we should see it, we will see it reflected in the world. As a matter of fact, if we're not seeing it reflected in the world, I would venture that we're not really feeling it within ourselves either. Because the world really is just going to be a manifestation of our own self-concept. If we get too hooked into seeing this world as a negative thing, that's really seeing ourselves as a negative thing. There really is no difference between the world and us. The world is us.
Yes.
The world, you know, when A Course in Miracles talks about the body, you could almost always substitute the world for any time when it says the body. So the world really is just our larger body.
Yes.
It is a symbolic representation of ourself, and how we see ourselves is how we will see the world. So yes, we understand that we manifested a lot of fear and separation and anger and attack, but we heal that. We go within, we ask for correction, we heal it within ourselves and in the world. It's the same process.
Yeah. And I guess if we're not healing it, we might get hooked up, as you say, in this idea that the world is a horrible, bad place that was created not out of love, and is really a fearful place. And we get stuck. We can't really shift onto this bit of being awake in the dream and having a beautiful, loving dream. And somehow we can get, and it's just too much.
There's actually beautiful things happening in the world all the time.
Yeah.
And we tend, well, I don't want to say we, but some people tend, they read those or hear those and they skip over them.
Okay.
And then focus in on the negative. And I mean, just today, okay, let's talk about today. I just read that India has decriminalized homosexuality today.
Wow.
So India, that's 1.3 billion people. That's
yeah. That's
is
wonderful.
A huge country. It's just a little smaller than China in terms of population. And so 1.3 billion people, a country of that size, has now decided to decriminalize a whole class of people. And these are amazing things that are happening that show that the world is healing.
Yes.
And yet people, some people will tend not to focus, but I believe we should be celebrating these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should be looking on these things and saying, that a way to go. I mean, that's an indication of our own healing.
Absolutely, yeah. But I guess...
Go ahead.
we can only celebrate that outer reflection of something wonderful happening if we really have done our, I guess, our inner work, where with that guilt that we think is inside and that fear inside. That's the only at that point really can we celebrate something out there. Otherwise, I guess we're projecting, and we're only wanting to focus on the negative out there, because that's all we're mostly aware of inside, I guess. I think that's what happened for me anyway.
I think as we become more aware of our loving, positive nature, maybe as we awaken to love, as the theme here says, then we awaken to it within, but we see it without as well. We should expect, I believe anyway, in my interpretation, we should expect the world to reflect us. And if we're truly awakening to love, we should expect, I would expect, the world to show me a reflection of that. And it does, it does. I mean, the truth is it does. And then the more you focus in on that, the more you see it. There's a lot of talk, chatter, ego chatter, just about the dire situation that the world is in America, the political system, and people talk about the terrible political system that we're in.
Yes.
But the truth is, statistics will show you that we're living through the most peaceful time in the history of the
That's true.
There is less violence by substantial amounts going on in the world now than there ever has been in the history of the human species. There was a really seminal book that it's called The Better Angels of Our Nature. It came out in 2011 with a professor, I think he's from Harvard, who did really extensive research on violence and the history of violence, the history of war, the history of slavery, the history of torture, the history of women's rights, and just shows in chart after chart and graph after graph just the drastic decline in violence that has taken place over the last years, over the last decades, over the last centuries, and over the last millennia. So we are on a pretty steady trajectory of I don't know if eliminating violence. He wouldn't go as far as to say eliminating violence, but really reducing it drastically.
Yeah.
And that's actually what's going on. I mean, violence is drastically reduced, and violence against all kinds of people and women and social groups, and and as if you decriminalize homosexuality, I mean you set the stage of eliminating all the legal impediments to people who identify as homosexuals, and you eliminate the violence perpetrated against homosexuals. So, I mean, the world is becoming the real world, which is in A Course in Miracles idea, this healed dream, this happy dream. It's happening. I mean, what A Course in Miracles says is going to happen literally is happening.
Yes.
It's not just, I don't believe, it's a metaphor. I mean, a lot of people relate to these passages as a metaphor, which is a very strange thing to say for a whole number of reasons. First of all, it's a misuse of the word metaphor. That's not what metaphor means.
Give us an example of metaphor, like making heaven, or making earth into heaven, or reflecting heaven, or
a metaphor would be
from the Course type of thing.
I was so angry I left my house a bat out of hell.
Oh yeah, that would be a metaphor. Yeah, sure.
Okay, everybody knows I'm not a bat.
Yeah.
Everybody knows I'm not coming out of hell. I'm coming out of my home.
Yeah.
So first of all, metaphors are obviously symbols. They're obviously symbols. They're not. There's no question about them. I fell through the trapdoor of depression. Okay, it's not a symbol. Depression does not have a trap door. No. I'm using a trap door as a metaphor.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you say, "Thus is the body healed by miracles," that's not a metaphor. That's a statement. It's just a statement that the body is healed by miracles, and so you've got a whole